Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Wanna Start the meeting. We'll start with the salute to the flag. Liberty and justice. Okay, first, do we have any public comments? Hearing none, move on. Yeah. So this is the second of the series of the budget meeting, and this will be on the capital improvement plan. And with that, Chris, I'm just going to turn it over to you. You've got about 75 slides prepared.
Yes.
No, we're good. Yeah.
That's short. I'm just making sure the screen share comes up and I'll go ahead and start. All right, well, good evening, members of the board, residents, staff, Chris Himes, Township Manager, and not to go too much down the rabbit hole for where we're at today, but just kind of more of a summary understanding of the whole budget workshop process. For those at home who can't see the laser pointer, we're currently here Monday, September 8th, which is our 5-year capital improvement plan review. That's a typo. That should be 26 to 30. So apologies for that one. But part of this is kind of the precursor to the general fund kind of major overview, which will be more towards the end of the month after the September monthly meeting. And then, of course, we'll hop into the enterprise funds primarily on the beginning of October. And then really it's just leading into the Board of Supervisors meeting in October, whether or not we need to have extra work session as necessary. And that sets us up in an earlier position to be able to recommend the approval for the advertisement of the FY26 budget in October if need be. If not, we have that extra month to workshop it and then do it again in November before the ultimate deadline of December. So any questions about this, let me know. But without further ado, I'll just get into the substance for tonight, which is our capital improvement plan update. So with that too, it'll be me briefing some of the summary understandings for the actual funds. And then I have department directors, they'll be briefing their slides as well. So if you have any questions, please, tonight's the night to be able to get that kind of expertise understanding of the why and the justification accordingly. But before we start, I just wanted to provide a summary overview of what it means for our capital improvement plan and just as a measure of revenues, expenditures, as well as kind of the whole way that we were able to put this together, which is essentially a cash pay-go strategy. You have cash, you can pay for improvements for your capital plan as one-time projects or maybe some minor financing for a 5-year function of, securing the piece of equipment. But this isn't with any sort of issuance of debt or anything else like that in terms of just a vehicle for the township to secure improving its infrastructure. So one thing I'll highlight here, the revenues are basically positioned as we briefed over and over again about a blend of strong interest income coming from the $22.1 million as the principal balance of this proceeds of the sewer sale that are still intact. They're still being invested with our Pliget account. And for those who don't remember, Pliget is the Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust. And then, of course, we have the need to also, in the out years, further increase additive revenues. So we have revenues for general fund matters, and then we have additive revenues in order to transfer those revenue positions to our capital fund to help fund infrastructure. So think of it like a two-pronged approach there. And of course, whatever balance that we do get still from liquid fuels adds specifically just for paving program matters. As you come down to expenditures, I kind of kept it by category really so we can kind of see where the investments are going. And the story has been the same for the last few years. Over 80% of our capital investments are into infrastructure, primarily paving program matters. And so the board's been very aggressive and constant about needing to fix roads. And of course, our capital plan reflects that. So let me see if, here we go. One thing to notice here, as you can see, from the out years of when we need to replenish we will eventually need to replenish our capital position because this is a cash pay-go strategy. It's also to know that as we need to invest more revenues coming out of the general fund into the capital fund, know that we're also able to replenish our balance too. So part of our future expenditures are going to be transferring revenue back into the cash fund that we have for capital. And we get to a level of sustainability here right around FY29. So we're not having to kind of seek other scaled revenue sources, we get into that kind of sustainment mode, which is a really good position to be in. You want to have a strong reserve balance. You want to have sustainable flow of cash going towards capital. And of course, a big part of that is this revenue coming in projected from 28, 29, 30. There's kind of two outcomes for that. One would be if no growth happens in the township, it would need to come from whether or not we want to or not fund capital. But if growth comes in, those are additive projections of a stronger tax base. So grow the tax rate or grow the tax base, but that's how that additive funding comes in. All right. So it's very similar to the last slide, but it's more of kind of the ins and the outs. But everything begins with your beginning cash balance for capital. So of course, you stack everything up at the beginning of the year. You add in those kind of nominal revenues in the in year, and then of course, you pay it all down for what you're spending to improve, which primarily is roads. And then interest usually kicks in towards the end year, which is part of our investment strategy. So we do, right now, the strongest performance we're still seeing is those 270-day maturities as well. And that gets you pretty much right at the near kind of studs, if you will, as you can see in the out years here of a tipped in negative with a replenishment here, and we utilize our full cash reserve position to fund it too. So we are basically at the kind of limitations of this. So of course, any financial windfall moment, any percentage reductions of performance in the out years, and this plan is still contingent upon having those perform the way that they're forecast to perform. If that no longer is the case, we'll have to adjust the strategy and move in a different direction. But for now, that's the plan that the township is going with. So all this is about beginning and ending your fund balance positions. And as you can see, when you stack everything up, a significant percentage of it, about 60+% of it, is into that sewer investment balance. So the way I like to think of it is you have your total cash, you have your less your sewer balance, because that kind of, that's a lot of the percentage pie there. But then you also have your restricted funds, because not all cash is created equal for the township. Some of it is earmarked cash for purposes for open space, the way that it is implemented. Same thing with our airport fund and some other funds. Those are restricted funds that are for the sole purpose of those kind of individual enterprise functions too. So really it's about that net cash balance when you get rid of all the other things kind of on top of it. And of course, as you can see, this is a product of paying down on capital for the most part, because as of 2023, we stopped the bleeding in the general fund, because that's what was going down, because we were in a deficit and we were spending our own general fund reserve position to fund operations, which is the primary justification for the tax increases the last 2 years. And we want to avoid that and getting out of it. And of course, this is just another way of showing it. But as you can see, it's the spend down in our capital cash position, but that's at the behest of building all of this sustainable interest income that basically treasury managed style. All of this goes back into that cash account position. Good times. So moving in, we'll just go categorically here. So I'll try to make sure that we're being somewhat brief about it and save questions for the end here if you do have any. But we have to get through, I think, about 60+ different project initiatives. So please take notes. We'll try not to stop here just for the sake of purposes of keeping a good flow for everything. So pretty topical. First thing for administration for general government capital is the need in 28 to reassess our comprehensive plan. This has been on the docket for a few years as a recognized kind of replacement function for our own strategic planning. You do it generally every 10 years. We implemented the 2018 comprehensive plan, so therefore 28, we want to be ready to roll out the next 10-year iteration of it. So for next year, we also wanted to earmark some needs for continuing to improve our GIS function. This is specifically too with our transition from the forecast. It's called the interactive zoning map. We have it right now through general code, which is our code of ordinances provider. At some point, we're going to jump to a different system with MuniCode to do that. And we want to basically take whatever the Michael Baker team, which our zoning consultant, has put together from a GIS perspective, and port that over into a township. We'll call it like a GIS portal. So the goal is to roll it out, add some other additive feature functions to it, so they would have a more of a kind of like a hub portal, if you will, for GIS functionality. Really, it's about kind of illustrating information over a map. That'll be a big part of it. We want to be able to see if we can put in some performance dashboards for the future, just basically ways that people can visualize data in the township and GIS, specifically with the Esri GIS service, is an excellent platform to do that. Granted, it's a highly configurable product. It's not necessarily anything that on-staff capacity for doing that kind of build out. And so this is just a secured amount of funding to make that happen. And the need to do it next year because we are moving and migrating over the map. This was brought up a few years ago, but if you go down our basement, it kind of looks like the catacombs from that last scene in Indiana Jones. And so it's basically full of all of the parcel data that we have on file here. And some point we need to be able to digitize that inventory kind of for twofold. One, as a redundancy, just to make sure you don't have all of like your, like cash stuck in your mattress cushions kind of thing. We want to make sure we just don't only have paper copies of everything. And then another one too is you can condition in a way where you actually would have kind of like a self-service user portal. So if I wanted to go look for my parcel information, kind of like what you can do at the county, you can do the same thing with the township. So it would be like a searchable database on a parcel UPI basis and would pull up all existing permits and all this basically stuff that we get reached out to for like right to know requests. This would be more of a self-service right to know request portal, if you will. But of course, the biggest ticket here is the dedicated resource, i.e. in this case, hours to do it. You're paying for labor for the most part because you're talking about over a year's worth of labor cost at market to be able to just do all of the scanning, feeding everything into those scanners, building out the digital inventory. So it's more of a measure of you're paying at a cost per hour basis. And then of course, with that comes the need to actually have the digital scanner, which we do not have. This is probably a pretty common piece of equipment for any land development department to have. So when you get a set of new plans, the first thing you usually do is just digitize the inventory and scan it in there. So it's like allowing us to correct backwards. It also allows us to just kind of continue a digital process moving forward. And you can lease these things. It's like having an office printer. One thing to recognize, it's been a while since we did some of our cybersecurity enhancements. I don't know if anybody pays attention to like local government news, but you get a lot of malware initiatives and attacks. We get them constantly. In fact, if I could get the Ridge Summit team to put together kind of a dashboard, you can see how many times this township actually gets attacked on a daily basis. Our cybersecurity system is strong, but needs to be updated. And you want to make sure you're proactively in front of it rather than having to react to it after the fact, where they basically hold hostage all of your data for a financial payment. And this is also part of the rolling enterprise fleet lease program. So this is just basically we have a small fleet to support the staff that goes out into the community. So hopefully on a routine basis, you're seeing our vehicles out and about. They're mostly for our community development department for property maintenance and commercial building inspections. And then also we have one with the Public Works Department for the sign truck vehicle that we have. This is just a rolling payment. And then what's not reflected here is the additive equity at kind of the year 5. So what Enterprise does is they lease these out to us. And then we also build equity for the vehicles. They bring them back in. That equity difference is provided as a means to lower the overall payments for that year. And you don't get that really realized until essentially year 6. So right now, we are now in year 2 of the first 5 for that first wave. If you walked into the building this evening, you probably noticed that the parking lot's in pristine condition. It's original to the building, and it's one where just around the edges, just need for like a sealing and surfacing measure. It's got a lot of trip hazards out there. We get some comments about it as well. It's just the fact that it's been over 20 years, and it's time to take another look at it for sealing it up and putting fresh coat of asphalt on there. And I'll jump over to Parks and Open Space.
Thank you. You gotta work the thanks so much. All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Mike Buck. I'm the Director of Parks and Open Space. Hope everyone's doing great tonight. So I'm going to be going through first the kind of parks portion here. So this slide is a summary of the finance purchase for the truck and a tractor. Both items were approved as part of the FY25 Parks Capital Improvement Plan. Well, it was approved in 2025 because they're being financed. Those payments are being stretched out over the course of the next 5 years, the end of 2020. So for the F550, over the course of 5 years, we've got $34,044.72 every year for the next 5 years, for a total of 170,220.60. And then for the tractor, we've got 5 years at $9,204.48 each year, for a total of $46,022.40. Now, the tractor was received in May of 25, and it's been a welcome addition to the team. It's quite the little workhorse there. The truck, the chassis is built, it's been sent to the upfitter. We should have that delivered sometime by like mid-fall. We're also requesting for FY26, commercial zero-turn mower. So this would be used to maintain the trails, open field spaces, recreation areas. It'll also help offset the cost spent on contracting the work out currently to some property maintenance companies. Total cost would be $17,221.70, with 34% of that going to the capital fund and 66% going to the open space fund. All right, this next slide here is for tractor equipment, actually attachments for our existing tractor. It's a pallet fork, root grapple, got an auger here, and a backhoe. These pieces of equipment would kind of maximize the functionality of our existing tractor, kind of turning our one tractor into a jack of all trades. So anywhere from loading, unloading pallets, the grapple would really come in handy cleaning up storm damage, trail maintenance. The auger, we do a lot of fence and signage installation and maintenance. That would really beat the whole hand digging the holes. And then the backhoe there for trail maintenance, repairs, and even construction in the future. And then last but certainly not least is the New Garden Park right here, fitness equipment. So these would be in the 3 fitness areas around the main playground where the core equipment is located. The existing equipment is rusting and in disrepair. It's also cited as an area needing attention in the recent community survey. The core equipment was replaced back in 2017-ish, I believe, while the fitness center equipment has been there, I think, since the park was opened in the early 2000s. I can't, in the past 4 years, I can't think of any time where I've actually seen people using it. So this would not only be a replacement, but then also an upgrade to make it a little more accessible and interesting to park goers. All right, Public Works. Yeah, I think there's definitely value in that. Why we went the route of the compact tractor is there are more attachments that you can use for it in tight and confined spaces versus the skid loader. It tends to be limited. It doesn't usually have the like the PTO shaft in the back or attachments. Yeah. Good question. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Kenny Reed, Public Works Director for New Garden. These items were both purchased last year, the truck and the tractor. We made the first finance payments on them already. Again, we leased these for 5 years to help reduce the burden on the capital budget. The pickup is 21,000, just shy of $800 for 26, being $108,000 overall. We also added a number of smaller items into this. We put a lift gate on one of the other trucks. We bought a scanner to read the computers on the trucks, a thumb for the backhoe, and a couple other little miscellaneous things. So that's why that seems exceptionally high for just a regular pickup truck. And then we got the road bank mower at the end of June. We used it for the first time in mid-July, I guess, to do the second mowing. It seemed to work really great compared to hoping that it wouldn't fall apart since the old one was 25 years old, which it did fall apart while we were using it. We're still waiting on the radio got installed end of last week, and then we're still waiting on the extra warning lights on it. I had just checked in last week, and they're still waiting on them to come in. So once they come in, we'll get installed, and then it'll be 100% ready to go. For 26, we were looking at adding a trailer of some sort. Right now, we have a 20-foot equipment trailer, but it's got toolboxes and stuff on it. So then our 20 to 24-foot length of pipe hangs off the back of it. It makes it kind of a pain in the butt. And then we also have to bring a piece of equipment out, drop it, run back to the shop, pick another piece of equipment out, run it out, and then in the afternoon, we got to do the same thing. I haven't decided if it's going to be a gooseneck trailer like this or a tag along to fit behind one of our dump trucks. We'll kind of iron that out when we get a little bit closer to it. And then some miscellaneous small equipment, like another backpack blower and another asphalt saw with a cart and water tank and all that. Having one, we have one now, but it's 15 years old, I think. So it's getting up there in age and has a lot of hours on it. So every time we go to use it, something else breaks. It's a $10 part here, a $50 part there, but it still adds up. And then you got 5 guys standing around staring at it while one guy works on it to fix it. Another thing that we have rented a few times in the last years is a bigger excavator than the mini that we have. It is a lot more versatile than I thought. I never thought we'd have a mini, but we use the thing more than the backhoe. This would be about the same size arm as the backhoe, but obviously being an excavator, be a little bit more versatile where you can spin all the way around instead of only 180 degrees. And then all of our attachments for the backhoe arm would fit on this and vice versa. So we'd be able to use our 18 30-inch bucket along with the jackhammer that we have for our backhoe on this. And then this was spec'd out with a 24-inch, they call it a jawbone bucket, where you can actually like pinch tree branches and stuff like that. That is what this would come with. And then that could go on our backhoe as well to maximize the efficiency on both pieces of equipment. We were looking at doing a 1-year, just a straight out purchase on this instead of a financed option. We moved the loader from this year to 27. Knock on wood, it's been running pretty good. There's a lot of things happening where I don't know if it's going to be better to refurbish this like we were planning or just buying a new one when the time comes. So I kind of wanted to, if we can stretch this a little bit further, I want to see what those options are in 27 when we go to do that. And then for 28, we were looking at replacing this dump truck, which is a 2010. As you can see there, in the last few years, we've spent over $40,000 keeping this thing running. Actually, I think all 3 of you guys remember a few years ago when this thing just blew up every other week, it seemed like, and we were putting injectors and heads and bearings and crankshafts, and we ended up putting a whole new motor in it because it was just a very unreliable piece of equipment. For stormwater, there's been an ongoing issue with one of the pipes on Wilkinson. As you can see, it's almost completely filled in, but it's all a wetland area, so we can't really go in and clean it out. I think Pannoni's been working on looking into this and working with DEP to get the permits to do it, but it's a long, drawn-out process. And then this is just a repeat from slides previously. We have 60+ miles of roadway. I think it's 62 and some change. Not all of it is liquid fuels eligible, so those we have to actually pay for completely out of general or capital fund for maintenance. And I did find one road that's not on there at all, but it is eligible. So I've been working with Winnie to get that added, which won't be added until 27's funds at this point, because yay, PennDOT. We do a roadway analysis every 2 years through with Robotics through Pannoni. They drive the segments of the road and use AI to rate the roads and all that. And that's a map of what they give you overall. Obviously the greens are good, yellows are okay, and there is some red in there. And that is the roads that need significant help. This is just a breakdown using 2025's costs for doing road work. I know almost every time we're out there, people pull down the window, and after they get done cussing at us for holding them up, they yell, "Why don't you just pave the road?" I wish I'd have thought of that. I don't know where they were years before. I prefer to be out in the rain and the snow and everything filling potholes in, but for just doing like minor road work, the tar and chip that everybody loved that PennDOT did recently, to do a mile of road at 20 feet wide, you're looking at like $80,000. That's not that big of a deal. It doesn't give you any ride quality, but it does save the road. The three things they tell you that kills the roads are water, water, and water. So you seal the cracks up and make the road last longer. People don't like driving on it, but it's kind of one of those necessary evils. So you're looking at $80,000 roughly to do that. To do what we just did to Hillendale this year, because the road was falling apart and had base issues and it was narrow. To do a mile of road, you're looking at $751,000. Whoever made that noise, that's exactly what I hear every time I say that. It is extremely expensive to pave roads, so that's why we try to use the tar and chip and the fog seal when we can to preserve what we have. And then one other thing, I think 80% in that community survey, 80% of the people said their top three priorities was the condition of paved roads in the township. 65%, I believe, that was their number one priority. So it's obviously a big thing to the residents of the township. So for 26, we want to finish Hillendale. That would be from where we left off near Scarlet or Thompson all the way to Scarlet. We couldn't do it this year because they put that water line in for the Thompson development, and we wanted to settle and everything before we pave over top of it. That way it doesn't, if something fails, it doesn't work. No, that was the contractor's work. We have a little bit more teeth if something does end up happening with that roadway. And then the next section would be New Garden Road between 41 and Newark, the Penn Green side, so opposite of the school. We would try to widen that a little bit, do some base repair, do 11 course and a wearing course, and then Old Limestone, the entire length, widen, do base repair, and just level that because of the amount of traffic. And this was, I think, pretty much on the same schedule from the 5-year plan when we started it back in 23, short of a few additions here, or short of moving things around a little bit just to help balance it out. So that a lot of this shouldn't be new to anybody. And then there's a picture, the top left is a picture of New Garden Road, how you can see the roads falling apart. And then all those little green dots next to it are the potholes that we filled in over the last few years. And then down the lower right-hand corner is the section of Hillendale between Thompson and Scarlet. There's one little good section in there that you can see by Sunrise Drive, because they just somewhat repaved that when they did the intersection 15, 20 years ago, whatever it was now. So then for 27, we'll be looking at doing Scarlet from where we finished a few years ago around the S-Bends out to the intersection at street where the McDonald's is, Polo, Cedar Spring, and then tar and chipping Old Limestone, since we only did the level course the year before. Let that oxidize a little bit and then cover it up, and it holds up pretty good. We did that a few years ago to Sharp from like the back entrance of Candlewick out to 41, and that has held up phenomenally considering all the traffic that road gets.
Do we have to list roads for 2026?
It was the slide prior to that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this is the chart for it. These are the pictures for 26.
Yes.
That's all right.
And this is all in the posted on the agenda capital budget. So every resident has access to this entire slide deck as we speak.
That's right. And one thing to note is generally they say a road will last 20 years. That isn't the case anymore with the mix that they're using. So if we have just rounding down to 60 miles of road, 20 years apiece, we need to be paving 3 miles of road a year. We're 1.9 at $1.6 million for 26, 1.34 for $1.4 million for 27. So just kind of that, we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. Now, there are tons of different factors that play into that. We have roads that have been paved since before I started in 2008, and they still look brand new. They have no issues whatsoever, but then there's other roads that we've paved since I started, and we've already repaved them. So, so New Garden, for 28, we would do the other side of New Garden where the school is. I think that's scheduled to open in 27.
It's going to be the fall of next year. And this was intentionally to kind of break it up to allow for just whatever kind of interruptions might exist and then address the New Garden Elementary School side in the out year after that one. We're trying to make sure that we're like Thompson and Hillendale. We want to make sure that we're not having to do it twice.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, and then we would, we're hoping a lot of the work for that Thompson development will be wrapping up by 28. So we would do that lower section that they are not paving, and then potentially address any issues on that upper section that they are supposed to be paving as part of the project. And then doing Rocky Springs Road as well. Again, given the volume of that road, we weren't planning on doing a wearing course. We were just going to do the level. And then the following year, which you'll see in a second, do the tar, chip, and fog seal. There's some pictures of New Garden Road on the school side in the upper left-hand corner, along with the robotics study, which it doesn't look bad, but you can see that it is starting. So a few years from now, especially after they start running, while they're continuing to run all those trucks on for the construction, that's going to fall apart pretty quick. And then down the lower corner is Rocky Springs, again, yellows and reds. So for 29, we were looking at doing both sides of Southwood, the little stub south of Limestone Road, and then the northern section between Limestone Road and Broad Run, along with Buttonwood from Newark Road out to the state side of Broad Run, like down towards Watson Mill area. The little section of Bucktoe between Sharp and the Kennett Township line, that little one-lane bridge. Hartfeld Drive, the entire length. Milling, base repair, and wearing on that. We weren't planning on doing a leveling course just because it's through a development, and most of that has positive drainage to begin with. And then, as I said, tar and chipping Rocky Springs. Since a lot of this doesn't have the widening and the full depth base repair like Hillendale does, we're getting a lot further with the amount of money and the mileage of road. As you can see there, we're doing almost 2.5 miles for only $1.5 million. And then there's that one on the upper left-hand corner is the robotics segment view for Buttonwood. That's the intersection at Southwood and Limestone for the potholes and everything that we've done over the years. And then the lower right-hand corner is is Hartfeld Drive through the lower half of Hartfeld Drive anyway through Hartfeld. And then for 30, we were looking at doing Broad Run from Buttonwood down to the sewer plant in Somerset, and then Auburn the entire length in the township. Those numbers are severely subject to change because I'm trying to do like a 10% increase year over year, but it's hard to say what the numbers are going to be. We were actually on most of the line items from this year, we were actually a little bit less than what we got for 24, which surprised me, but we can't guarantee that's always going to be the case. And then there's some pictures of Auburn. As you can see, that right-hand shoulder is dropping off quite a bit. And then, which one did I say? Oh, Auburn. I have no idea what that one is. I'll have to look at that. I'm not sure what that one on the right-hand side is. Is that? Yeah, maybe it's Broad Run through Somerset. Good call. Yeah. Thank you.
So just really quick, Chris, I think important
Yes.
for anyone who might be like online or present, that there are PennDOT roads and there's township owned roads. So they're very
Yes.
different. So for anyone listening, thinking, well, why aren't you doing?
So yes, we do have a section on our website, and the one thing that we're recognizing too is just the need for, you can't just say it once, you can't say it twice, you almost have to be repetitive about it. So we're going to continue to formulate a more robust and consistent township communications plan of like infographics and materials going out about, hey, did you know, kind of stuff. And we're working on that right now. And the goal is to kind of roll that out later this fall as just a separate discussion point for the township in terms of just, number one, addressing some of the items in the community survey about the need to kind of have more available information, and what better way to be proactive with a kind of formulated approach to it as well. And Kenny was spot on with the water. And it's just one where we don't have a consistent level of drainage across the roadway into the right of way. And also to add to that, it's not necessarily just water. It's the fact that the tonnage of vehicles driving over water saturated roadways is where you get the heavily buckling on the inside. So it's a compounding issue. And then of course you get extreme weather when it comes to lots of water and or lots of ice and kind of conditions. And it's just rinse and repeat. So that's why we have a lot of roadways because of the unique nature of New Garden, where we have all of those factors kind of at once, which is a good problem to have, right? Another one too, I just wanted to provide it at a high level. The reason we're focusing on a lot of equipment purchases, if you can think about it, is that the townships kind of foray into larger levels of management of parks and open space. Historically wasn't the case because we just had New Garden Park. It was a focused concentration. But with the additive measures for New Garden Hills and the Smedley Preserve, it expands that need, as well as additive trails, which are a desired interest for the community, but it requires investment, which is human capital and equipment capital as well. And that's why we're adding these things in, because they are precursors for rolling out those larger public spaces as well. And the good times are only going to be rolling when it's as affordable as it is today, as it is for tomorrow. Plus, it's one where having additive parks and open space staff, they're recognizing these needs, so they're kind of building out the program on the fly. It's like having a Parks Commission Public Works team, which is helpful. Another one too, same thing for Public Works. If you remember, we invested into increasing compensation to be able to actually budget at a number for having the required amount of labor force that we needed for a Public Works department, which they weren't at prior to that. They were at what, like 5 or so consistent. We needed to be up around 8 or 9, simply because we have 60 miles of roads, all the stormwater facilities. You need a larger team, you need more equipment. So the goal was to increase productivity. So that's what those measures mean. So there was maybe some confusion on my part last year in terms of projecting some of these quote-unquote future initiatives. These are unfunded, they're not spec to happen. It's just to fill a need, see a need, fill a need, should you need to move in this direction if you needed to. But I wanted to make sure that we did the cost analysis so we're prepared should it become an active project as well. One of them was just, we were able to kind of lean on some Chester County Consortium of Managers type data for our HR function by just looking at kind of staffing levels and also competitive compensation kind of packages when you come to a understanding of what your workforce needs in terms of just being like a valued employee for your organization. And this was part of it. So it's a TBD, but did some kind of projections of the consulting hours for these types of analysis. It's basically also to address the need that the township doesn't have like a formal, I forgot what it's called, like a job description inventory with a step kind of like a per scale for wages stuff. So we haven't done that performative analysis ever really in the history of the township. So we're really just doing market competitive kind of differences when we're seeking for maybe filling a new position or vacant position as well. So it's very ad hoc. This would allow us to not have to be ad hoc. And of course, we would pull this into our existing employee manual. Another one too is in the future. Of course, we've always had that kind of vacuous space downstairs with never really an understanding of what to do with it. So right now it's full of Boy Scouts equipment and cabinets, essentially, for all of the township records. So this is one where it was originally spec'd to be the New Garden Police Department floor on the basement area. Of course, that didn't happen. They regionalized and went to Baltimore Pike, and that leads to Gap Newport Pike. And that's one where what could it be in the future? And it's kind of like a shuffling deck. If you prioritize, if you need to have at some point additive staff, or you just want to kind of renew some of the facilities up here, could you move some of the public spaces downstairs? Or if you want to have kind of like an epicenter for emergency operations, kind of management types of functions. If you think about it, if you have like a mass casualty event, let's say a tornado kind of goes through the area, takes up some houses, you have an evac center here that has wired for capacity and resiliency in its center structure. So it's more of like a reaction plan as well. Granted, right now, this is what they would be going to do to seek refuge. You have other ways to kind of doing it, almost like a disaster shelter kind of thing, and some other kind of ways. But this was just to say, just doing the tenant improvement is going to be about 1.3 million. So if you skew it towards a specific function, you might be able to get competitive grants, although right now I probably wouldn't call FEMA for money. This is one where we just wanted to look at the upstairs. The admin wing, this was just kind of like a, what would it be as an exercise? Because when New Garden Town Hall was built, it was built without really an understanding of like having like consistent staff in there. So we really have people kind of tucked away in pockets. It works, it suits our needs today, but you're thinking of this as for the future. That's part of it. And of course, if you wanted to add more like inspection services, permitting services, anything from a land development function, you would essentially activate the floor and use more staffing spaces over here, which would actually just free up capacity. It's kind of like a shuffling of the deck if a little bit. So the one thing, if you ever wanted to concentrate it, you might want to just look at just a phase one improvement. And then all that would do would be you would have a loss of a meeting space for a media meeting room. And then you wouldn't really have to address this. So at a minimum, like what you could do if you wanted to expand support would be that phase one development function, which is really just more of like a refurbishment of the medium room on the east side of the building. Another one is as we're continuing to look at just, we'll call them water quality, stormwater types of initiatives, the township's ownership of New Garden Hills, formerly St. Anthony's in the Hills, is rife with opportunities. It's one where we've had a couple engineering kind of assessments of what to do in this area in terms of just stream restorations. And that's mostly because, number one, this is a place where we were looking at for potential BMP type credits for our DEP compliance. But then, of course, we were able to satisfy all of our BMP credits by moving absolutely everything with our MS4 permit to the Lochnairn Golf Course future Smedley Preserve as well. And if people haven't been up Church Road in a while or down McHugh Road, I would encourage anybody to drive by that area. I believe they're about 6 weeks out from completion. It's pretty impressive. They've essentially just kind of basically built an entire channel for a new stormwater kind of BMP throughout the entire golf course, about 100-foot cross section, lots of movement of dirt. It's pretty impressive what they were able to achieve. And they should be in more towards either the end of this year as a kind of completion update about what they did with kind of some summary slide details. But this was if they weren't able to complete it all there as like a measure of an add option to it, but it's still one where they went there and they saw a need. It just doesn't meet the sediment reduction needs for the township. And this is, of course, I think in the stream area where there's just downhill from the former dump on the Route 7. Is that right, Kenny? Yeah.
Yeah, that section there was where the stream was relocated to provide
Yeah,
area for the dump.
And I've walked through there a couple times. There's been some almost like a water fissure cut through the earth kind of thing. The sheer kind of levels to, if you haven't walked through a river right near a dump, I encourage it. But it's pretty kind of impressive of how steep those cliff sides are. So essentially, that was some of the reasoning for some of the down tributary water quality issues may have been a source of for the Broad Run. This is a tributary that runs into the Broad Run, but I don't know if it's dump is kind of like on this side. Yeah. Yep, it'd be over here. Yeah, it's still a buried in filled dump. That's what it is today. it's still there. Yep. If you remember from a few years back, I think it was in the summer or fall time from 23, actually, there was a commission, Cedarville Times was our stormwater engineer, did analysis of the infrastructure in Kenneman. Of course, they really kind of assessed the east side, and really, at the end of the day, there was essentially a level of options between what they could do, ranging from basically like a surface level treatment, not necessarily a level of conditional repairs needed, to the maximum. Of course, this is from pricing from roughly 2.5, 3 years ago. And that was more of a 25-year net reversion for improvement for water retention and control measures via DEP. All that's to say, you're looking at a $5 million price tag to do the level of repairs needed for the existing infrastructure in Kenneman Village. And it's because it's completely out of a state of repair, like it's poor. And the good news is this was identified after that measure was taken, and we took this information and basically handed it off to DEP for the Baltimore Pike intersection project potential there, because what they were looking at was really up around the intersection, doing a lot of the stormwater management right around the northern side and putting a bunch of retention ponds in that thing as their original plan. And that was before I think they really understood of kind of what it meant to do this down here. But since on the southeast side, there's this natural kind of watershed kind of basin area, it actually was more effective for them and actually cheaper to just take the water management from around the intersection down through Kenneman. And of course, that checks our box for completing the Kenneman side of it as well. So thank you, DEP, if that moves forward. There'll be public meetings about that here in the fall from DEP, excuse me, PennDOT. I keep on saying DEP, PennDOT, about that initiative as well. So it's not out of the clear yet, but that's the plan to help complete this project. And of course, that would be funded by PennDOT, not the township. And I can at least start off with the overview here, and then I'll have Mike Buck talk about the projects. But if you remember, the last 2 years, it's been leveraging open space. We'll call them like capacity building measures, mostly for equipment that supports not just our parks, but parks and open spaces, as well as the fact that we have these, well, now one kind of inactive progress park implementation project, which is Smedley Preserve. And then we have this kind of pending TBD for New Garden Hills. And of course, that was updated from a few summers ago about just what that scaled need was to do the full YSM master plan for New Garden Hills. It was over $30 million. We've done some revisions, and of course, Mike and the Parks and Recreation team have worked pretty diligently, especially now that we have a lot of the White Clay news for White Clay Point coming on hand to get a park update for the upcoming September meeting. So expect that this month coming up. But all that's to say, it was all about use of the 25% of your amassed fund balance, which as of 24, or excuse me, 25 was about 2.4 million. And then with that, you take 25% of that of your in-year revenue sources. So of course, for us, it was about taking that kind of percentage amount and then taking that as we're going to basically try to do two things. One is we're going to try not to exceed our in-year revenues because we don't want to oversaturate funds and deplete the fund balance. We want to keep it somewhat sustainable, but not to use all of it, use what we need as a percentage of, if you have a parks piece of equipment and the significant portion of that is to maintain open spaces, we percentage charge the open space fund. And of course, we also charged our maintenance operations, which is our personnel cost, as well as any equipment purchasing through the open space fund as well. So what that does is it blends the in-year use of revenues between doing stuff to increase capacity and fund operations and project implementations, and then leaving some level of capacity for in-year use of revenues to do open space purchases, whether that be a fee simple purchase, a conservation, or an agricultural easement on that property. And of course, if you're not spending these levels here on the actual open space initiative, maybe an opportunity falls through the cracks. I think people think it's a very simple kind of see a need, fill a need transaction. I'm just going to go here and buy your property. Those conversations are long, they're arduous. They can sometimes and often fall apart for a whole litany of reasons. But if you don't use that, then that just kind of builds upon your fund balance per year. So if you're not purchasing property, you're building fund balance, just the same way it was in the past. You're just not getting all of the revenue towards it. You're getting the percentage remainder after we have to service the township's needs, which is service our open space properties. And this is just projecting a earned income, kind of 2.5% kind of increase over time. Same thing we do in the general fund. What this doesn't do is at some point, if you don't grow, you're probably going to have to reduce that amount or more plateau it. And of course, this doesn't project out the additive revenues coming in from speculative new development at this time. So if those happens, you get growth and you get the developments coming online, you're more likely to see that kind of skew up even higher on the revenue side, which of course is good because then you also have additive revenues to add more towards open space as well. And yeah, we can go ahead and, there you go. The 25% of it allows us to kind of check both boxes, if that makes sense, without oversaturating use of the general fund and the capital fund to service open space. So I'll go ahead and kick it off to Mike.
Hello again, everyone. So as we make our way through these slides, I wanted to start off by again highlighting the recent community survey, specifically the feedback we received from residents saying that their top two parks and open space priorities were the interconnectivity of trails as well as the further implementation of the Smedley Preserve. The first portion here, the first couple of slides are all projects-based efforts that will be supported by the local share match function of the open space account. So the first one here is a part of the Smedley Preserve master plan related to safety. It is the, went to go for the laser and I pushed the next button. All right, so it is the pedestrian crossing that connects the west portion of the preserve to the east portion over here. So the suggestion is, after some discussion between the traffic engineer, PennDOT, and then our neighbors over in West Marlboro, is that we're leaning towards a kind of a speed bump solution here on the approach, one on each side, to calm traffic down, as well as road marking signage, and then possibly putting in a third speed bump here at the crosswalk to make sure that cars are slowing down. The local match would be $120,000 with the DCED grant covering $280,000. We were awarded a multimodal transportation grant to fund this project, and we are in the process right now of finalizing these designs, getting final approval from PennDOT and then our friendly neighbors in West Marlboro. The next project here would be moving from the safety effort to park access effort. The first part of that would be creating a dedicated entrance to the park, which would be located across from Sherwood Drive. So this would be this portion of the project we'd work with our traffic engineers on to do some scrubbing, clean up the road banks, and increase sight lines, and then get this access road in place. It's an estimated cost of $150,000 with a projected timeline for FY27. And then behind that, we would expand upon the entrance that was installed and put parking into place here, as well as an access road back to the existing park garage that's on site. The timeline for that is FY27-28 at an estimated cost of around $1.2 million. Most of the funding for this project, a majority of it, is grant funding. So our strategy to fund the park currently is a mix between the multimodal transportation grant, which I just mentioned. We were awarded $300,000 back in March. We've applied for the DCED Greenways and Trails grant. We should be hearing back about the awards sometime, hopefully at the end of this month. If not the end of this month, it gets pushed to, I think, November, and then if not November, it'll get pushed to January, but we should be getting some news on that soon. And then, and I should mention also that the multimodal transportation grant and the Greenways grant are funding the phase 1 portion of the project, while the LSA grant that we applied for here for $1 million would fund phase two, which is that entrance, parking, restroom, and signage portion. So here you can see that the total project cost between these two phases is just over, well, I'm sorry, I mean, all in is 4.3 million. We're going after about 1.5 million in grants with an estimated total project cost for phase one and two of 2.8 million. It's just a little pie chart showing you or illustrating how much each grant award is worth. All right, so this is the portion on Open Space Review Board's efforts to conserve land in the township. This chart here is kind of outlining their 5-year plan. It's not really a fixed roadmap as much as it is kind of like an informed wish list. So if everything goes well, you know, the next 5 years, they would like to conserve either through a conservation easement, an ag easement, or fee simple purchases, just over $6.5 million in land. So is there anything else I want to say about that? As we move through these slides, the properties focus on specific properties in the township. We've removed the names from the properties. Some property owners don't want their names shared publicly at this point. Other property owners don't currently know that their properties is part of our conservation vision. So until we have those conversations, until the homeowners are comfortable sharing that, they're just UPI numbers. Can you figure out where these properties are? Yes, but as we go through them, each one, I'll just go through what it is the Open Space Review Board hopes to accomplish, again, from a conservation standpoint, where it's located at in the township, and approximately how much we estimate it to cost. So for this first one here, it's located kind of in the middle southern portion of the township. This would be a 40-acre either conservation or ag easement with the possibility of putting a trail on the site and then connecting it into the White Clay Preserve at a total estimated cost of $400,000. This one here would be also either a conservation easement, possibly a trail easement, and it's located, I believe, somewhere in the middle of the township, middle-ish, for a cost of $375,000 for FY26. Again, the timeline here is just estimates. This property is in the heart of the township. It's proposed to be a fee simple purchase. The Open Space Review Board is very excited about this property. It'd be a cost of $4 million, but their interest here is, again, mainly land preservation with the potential to connect it to other parks and trails within the township. Here we have this property is, where's this one located? This property is in the southern portion of the township. The Open Space Review Board is interested in a conservation easement here, possibly a trail that would, again, connect this into the White Clay Preserve for a total cost of $177,000. This property, there's an interest in a conservation easement with possible connection into the Smedley Preserve for a total cost of $270,000. This property is Millrace Preserve. Okay, this property is in kind of like the northern Landenberg Village area and could serve as a potential kind of hub for the trails that are already existing. The thoughts are there could be a parking area, you know, with it being a hub for the local trails at a cost of $300,000. This property here, they're seeking a conservation easement on this and possibly a trail easement as well for a cost of $530,000. This property is in the Landenberg Village area. You'd be looking at a trail easement for this property, in the range of $80,000. This property, again, Landenberg Village area. As you'll see, a lot of these properties are in the Landenberg Village area, and the focus, there's an increased focus on this area, this corridor, because we have a lot of existing trails there as it is. So the hopes is that, you know, if we want to connect trails, that's probably the easiest place to do it first, and then we would move out in other areas of the township from there. Again, this area would be for a connector for the trails at a cost of 196,000. Then we have one here in the north, kind of east corner of the township. They're interested in preserving this property. They're also interested in its proximity to Kennett Township. That would be a cost of 239,000. All right, that's that. Oh, I'm sorry. And of course, there's this one. So New Garden Hills, as Chris mentioned, we are, myself and the Parks and Recreation Board will be providing an update on the park next Monday. The estimated cost of the revised master plan is $5.1 million, which we'll go into more detail next week. With the timeline kind of to be determined, funding kind of mechanism to be determined as well.
And just to highlight just one thing here as well, you know, when this was kind of in the seeds of putting it together, this is likely to be a number that we're going to work with the White Clay developer Stonewall Capital to seek kind of ways that they could chunk into that cost here for as well. So just another one too is also remember, this used to be over $30 million. So I would say a tremendous job by the parks planning staff and taking the heat of what are those elements of the YSM master plan that people were really resonating with in terms of what they want out of a park. And this plan, albeit somewhat reduced from that larger kind of active plan to more of a what the kind of resultant was, matches that at least. But it also doesn't completely negate the futurity of potentially re-exploring some of those initiatives, but it's essentially just the base plan, if you will. Another one, and if anybody wants to chime in on this one, when we're just looking at some of these opportunities out there, it's also to understanding that number one, the limitations of the open space fund when it comes to having to basically deliver a appraised value function for the purchasing of the property versus the market value that the owner's kind of essentially getting two kind of, we'll call them offers with. And now with the scarcity of certain properties in this area that has a higher growing real estate market, that's a gap that's going to start widening more and more. And our ability to match those funds will only come if we have other revenue sources to do so. So if there's a heavy conservationist or preservationist mindset, know that the limitations of the open space fund are likely to continue to be exceeded more so than not. And that's going to be one we'll really have to think about what that means. And of course, also what other levers that we have to pull, because right now there aren't a whole lot of them. So that's kind of probably be the hottest topic based off of existing conversations for the course of the next decade. New Garden is which ones are the winning ones that we want to go with versus which ones are kind of into the just kind of the eventuality of potential new development. So any questions about that, we can keep it to the end here, but just wanted to highlight those. Real quick, I won't steal John's thunder, other than the fact that this is just continues to be a highlight that because of the access of the airport fund to revenues coming for performative grants from the FAA through the Bureau of Aviation in Pennsylvania, we are still offered an incredible value prop of essentially only paying for about 6% of the total cost for these additive amount of projects. So that's what we wanted to try to mirror for the open space projects. But granted, there's just not that well of revenues out there that you're able to get from the federal side going through the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. But that's why we sought after for those grants, the lowest percentage matching grant. So you can keep a very nominal little reserve position and use those as matching funds more so than doing 50-50 grants or just kind of doing it yourself as well. So without further ado, John, I think you're the last act here.
Hey, John, great job on the air show, by the way.
Thank you very much.
It was awesome.
I appreciate that. Appreciate your support. John Martin, Aviation Director for New Garden Township. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to talk about the airport, talk about the capital plan. We do have some exciting projects geared up over the next several years at the airport to make it a better place for all. Up here, you can see sort of a summary of the upcoming projects from 26 until 2030. I want to first start by saying all these projects are dependent upon grant funding. As Chris alluded to, the source of funding for any of the capital improvement projects come from federal grants or state grants or the combination of the two. And our local share comes out of the airport operational fund. So keeping with the self-sustaining nature of the airport, all these capital improvement projects are funded by grant, and our local share is funded from the operational side. This has been an ongoing project. If you've been to the airport, if you haven't been to the airport, several of our T hangars were built in the early 70s, have Paraport roll-up doors. You can see the white areas here on the hangar. Those are roll-up curtains, essentially. They've lasted a very long time, but their lifespan is up or has been up over the last several years, and we have been replacing about 3 per year. And that this is what that slide alludes to, is the continuing replacement of these Paraport curtains, about 3 of them per year. We're actually coming up close to the end of replacing those, so that will be nice to be able to shift those dollars elsewhere. Installation of PAPI and reels. I've been up here talking about this PAPI and reel project several times. This actually was a project that was supposed to happen back when we did the runway, but because of the cost of doing the PAPI and reels and bringing new electric into the airport, we had to break those projects apart. We do have new electric supply into the airport. So now the focus is once again on the PAPI and rail projects. PAPIs are precision approach path indicator.
I would say for us non-aviation enthusiasts, if you want to get the acronyms.
Stand for runway and identifier lights. What they are used for, the PAPIs, as you can see, the 4 lights over to the right of the runway here, it gives a pilot an illuminated cue of if they're on glide slope. And it's about a 3-degree glide slope coming in on final. So the saying goes, white over red, you're okay. White over white, you're high, and red over red, you're dead. So you certainly want to see 2 reds and 2 whites when you're coming in on final. And it's certainly helpful when you're landing at night in an unfamiliar airport to have those PAPI light indicators out in front of you. Just make sure that you're on glide slope and that there's no tower or tree that you're going to hit, and at nighttime you won't see them. So total cost for that project is $333,000 in round numbers. Our local share $16,000, $17,000 to get those completed. And we're looking to do that next year. This is an exciting project that actually just came out of the woodwork about 2 weeks ago. The FAA announced that New Garden Airport is going to be part of their weather camera a new program. This is a program that started in Alaska, and they announced 162 sites in the lower 48 to take part of the weather cameras. They were actually on site 2 weeks ago to survey the airport to find the best location for these cameras that they're going to put up. And the footage will be accessible through an FAA website where anybody, but specifically pilots, can go on, log into New Garden Airport and see what the weather conditions are at the airport at any point. Electronic flight bags like ForeFlight, it's a program that's available on your iPad that a lot of pilots use for all their maps and approach plates and flight planning. They actually are implementing these weather cameras now into the ForeFlight app. So pretty excited about it. And we'll be one of the first ones to have it here. And there's no cost, so that's even better. Reconstruct terminal apron. This is a design portion of this grant. It's about $175,000 for the design. Our terminal apron, shown by this blue arrow, is this area in orange with which indicates a pavement condition index of 51 to 60. So it's in pretty poor condition. This main terminal apron, that's where if you're out at the airport, you'll see all the aircraft. We have tenants that are tied down on this apron. We have transient tenants that come in from other airports to visit the local community. they actually, they would station their aircraft on our apron as well too. So this is a total reconstruction. Again, this design is planned for next year, and then the actual construction of it is planned for 27. And again, this is all subject based on grant funding. It's also subject based on grant funding that could possibly change. An example of that would be our new driveway into the airport. If you visited the airport recently, we have a brand new driveway. It's nice and smooth. It's wonderful. That project, again, a grant funded project, started out as a sort of a rip up the bad areas and make patches in the driveway. As we got into the project, we looked at costs. The state decided to give us an extra $50,000 to completely finish the driveway. And I think what's going to happen here, even though that we have these projects planned the way that we have them now, I think what's going to happen is we're going to get some additional funding to finish all the taxiways or all the remainder taxiways at the airport. So that will be a huge improvement for our airport at New Garden. But right now, this is what we have planned, so that's why we're presenting these numbers tonight. Okay, so for 27, we're also looking at an AWOS project, an AWOS 3 project. That's Automated Weather Observation System. What that means for us as a pilot is that we can tune into local AWOS frequency and get existing weather conditions at that moment on the ground at New Garden Airport, specifically the height of clouds, how high they are above the surface of the earth, the barometric pressure, the winds, and visibility. And that is important because if we're flying in, let's say in a day where the clouds are low, we have to file and fly an instrument approach into New Garden. We know that our approach goes down to 800 feet. If the clouds are higher than that, we'll be okay to get in, but if they're below it, chances are we're going to have to go missed and go to another airport. So without a weather observation service at an airport, we're tuning in Wilmington to get our closest weather. And it's not always the same as what Wilmington is reporting. So we kind of take right now Wilmington's weather and Chester County's weather, and we average the two, and we figure New Garden falls in between, so it gets us close. Crack seal and seal coat pavement at the airport. This is a 27 project. Again, we don't have the ability to tar and chip the runway due to potential FOD for aircraft. So we seal the cracks and we seal coat the pavement, and that's about all we can do. Fuel farm. The fuel farm at New Garden Airport, here's actually a picture of our existing fuel farm. We have 24/7 fueling, much like going to Wawa or Lantope to get your hoagie and get your fuel. We don't have hoagies yet at the airport, but we do have fuel available. So you can pull your aircraft up and get fuel out there any time of the day. Those tanks have been in the ground since the 80s, early 80s, as a matter of fact. So they've certainly exceeded their operational lifespan. So it's time to remove those tanks and replace them with a new tank, a new fuel farm facility, which will actually bring in Jet A as well as avgas. That's $1 million project, but it's certainly something that's needed and certainly has a potential liability risk right now due to the tanks that are in the ground. It will, yeah. If we have Jet A, we'll be able to service a different type of aircraft that we have now. All right, this is a snow removal equipment grant. There are two parts to this, and part equipment A and equipment B, just two different funding sources. You can see one's a 5% local and the other one is a 0% local share. The snow removal equipment, this is a line item in the state and federal grant system that if we use it, terrific. If we don't use it, it goes away. So certainly would be in our best interest to have a nice snow blower. I don't know if something that big is a necessity, but that's a picture I found online. Snow blower is important versus plowing. We cannot use any type of salt out at the airport due to the fact aircraft are aluminum and highly corrosive, or salt's highly corrosive to the aluminum. If we plow the runway, it makes windrows against the taxi lights, so the best option would be to wait till the snowfall is done and then blow it off the runway, blow it on the other side of the runway lights. And lastly, the airport master plan update. This more or less is a sort of a comprehensive plan of the airport, where it exists today and where it's going to go in the future. Our last master plan update was done in 2007, so it's certainly time to consider updating to that. A lot of the proposed construction that's in the current master plan has already been completed. And it's time to look at the next 10 to 15 years at the airport and where we're going in the future. Also, a couple very important documents that are included in the master plan. One's the ALP and the other one's the Exhibit A. Essentially, that is the roadmap for the Bureau of Aviation to look at to consider grant funding. So if we don't have something listed in our ALP, then it's not eligible for grant funding. So we have to put everything that we want in the next 5, 10, 15 years into a ALP to be able to even go after the grant funding for it.
John and Chris, really quick, just to kind of clarify.
Sure.
No funds from the general fund are moving over to the airport. You guys are just pretty much fully self-sufficient.
Yeah, so we have an airport fund, an operations fund, and then we have a reserve fund. And there's basically just keeping a level of capacity based off of surplus revenues from operating fund.
Yep.
That essentially gets transferred into a local share matching, essentially a reserve fund. And that's where we pull these revenues that match these grants.
Awesome. I just
Um,
wanted to clarify because you
correct.
hear internet comments. So I just wanted to make sure that that was really.
Yeah, and
spelled.
they're completely divided between the two.
Yeah.
And that's also one where the goal is, I mean, number one, a lot of the implementation of prior grant funding has been to just essentially establish, we'll call them just the type of conditions at the airport that outside flyers would want to go to the airport.
Right.
As a former aviator myself, it's just one where if I'm going to a place, I want to know that there's solid instrumentation to get in there if I need it. It has good weather reporting. I can easily file. You mentioned food. I mean, I remember flying around the Southeast all the time. I'm going to go there because I know I can get some good fried green tomatoes. Like I just access to things and without being hassled by going into a large major feeder airport is kind of the realm we want to be in.
Exactly.
If you're talking about commercial aircraft, you're not talking about larger fixed wings, you're talking about smaller type citation type traffic, as well as rotary aircraft that we don't have capacity to service. And that is an unmet need in the area where if you have a lot of these military types flying around, essentially they're always here anyway. They would be able to stop here, get gas, and then leave. And that's a higher commodity from a sales perspective because we do sell fuel. And of course, that builds surplus revenues, which goes back in to sustain the airport. So if you don't have it, you're missing out on a certain percentage audience of people that you could be servicing.
Great. Yeah, I just didn't want any of us to have to, hopefully we can just avoid
No.
any of those comments, but you do a great job, making sure everything is funded. So thank you.
Don't been be self-sustaining of the airport, but we do have dollars that can back to the general township to pay for services rendered on the airport behalf.
To help reduce our expenses.
So we do
Yep.
have dollars.
Well, thank
That's
you.
true, yeah.
That's important. Thank you so much.
Can you go back one slide real fast?
Which one?
That one right there.
Yes.
Can you use the highlighter to show where the encumbered and unencumbered sections of the?
So we're still looking at that today because there's been a lot of interpretations in terms of obligated, not obligated, everything in terms of the grant funded amount versus what the township kind of contribution. This is in the 2009 purchase of the airport. I've actually met with John recently and we're basically reconvening to put this into a commission strategy moving forward. But essentially everywhere north of the airfield is considered to be this airport development zone district. It's been like that since we purchased the airport. And with that, inside the airport development zone, which contiguously is about 96 acres, there's this kind of line in between maybe about 70 4-ish acres, if you will, of, we'll call it expansionary area for the airport master plan to kind of grow into. And of course, if you add services to that layout area, those services in terms of maybe their hangar rentals, maybe it's servicing some need, those revenues go to the airport. And that leaving some sort of a percentage amount, it's roughly about 26 acres of township space to do land development type function to support that area in the township, which is zoned previously as a business park. Under the new term zoning, it's the innovation district. And that can be kind of servicing maybe an alignment for an organic aviation function there, maybe be housed for like a business, a manufacturer or something that of nature. Whatever that is, it's going to be more really built on what's the greater good, what's the value kind of in doing that. And since it's township owned land, we're looking at what it means to do that based off of market conditions, based off of site complexity, because it's essentially a hill that starts up here and kind of goes all the way down. Like this is much higher in elevation than it is down here. There's essentially like a very steep bank along Airport Way there that kind of eats into it. So all that's to say that that is a function of planning and strategy to pull forward for a future board meeting to just get more input about what do we want to do with this space and what are the recommendations that kind of meet the needs for both. So I don't know if that was too long-winded of an answer, but just making sure that we are already looking at it proactively.
Yeah, no, that's helpful.
Yep.
Did you ever go to Air Transport Command, the restaurant down in Newcastle? Okay. Can we get that up here? Yeah.
Right.
We're going to get a wing stop. That's what we're going to call it, chicken wing.
But can we put it in a C-130?
But no, it's basically you want to be that fixed base operator. You want to have multiple kind of checks in the box just to seek more airport traffic. Because I don't know if John said it or not, the viability airport is based off of its runway counts. So those grants are nice when you have a feeder status. If you go lower than the threshold, you lose your feeder status. You're not seen as an investable airport opportunity. So the goal is to keep the runway counts high. And if you've seen in the recent monthly manager reports for all the departments, the runway counts, over half of them are from our own flight school right now, which was a huge reason why we invested into the flight school to keep it owned by the township, because it keeps that alive and well. So all is to say, more runway counts, the better.
Accurate.
Yeah, not the DVRPC estimates. Yeah.
Pick it up in 2 weeks and take that traffic information to the formula and say, this is what your operation is here. I never really trusted that, just because there's a lot of problems that occur. But now it's all based on technologies that are on aircraft, ADS-B technology, so constant glider traffic that do not have ADS-B, so it should be really good counting. But if you look at the monthly reports, it gives a breakdown on what type of operation. So even, Thursdays and Tuesdays and Saturdays are kind of our late proper.
Great, thank you.
So a lot of detail. Don't know if you have any questions or not. And of course, all of these are rolled into their individual kind of fund kind of programming in terms of just the financial means to do so. So I don't know where you wanted to start or finish, but workshop and open for questions.
Mm-hmm. You have any questions?
Yeah.
Christie?
I guess he has one.
No.
Start with him. Go ahead, go ahead.
It all depends on the question.
All depends.
Yep. It depends. So it's not in the airport, because this is all based off of that original.
Still,
This is all based off of the original, we'll call it like in 2009, they built an airport master plan, and everything that went into these capital plans over the course of the last several years are about building out this site, which doesn't include the potential of a runway extension. That would be, we would revise this, and then based off of the futurity of additive services, do the assessed need of, do we need this additive runway count space or not? It's kind of like if you build this, then that is the thing that gets you that, then you build that, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like it depends, if that makes. No, no, not now. Yeah. Yeah. But let's say if we get the Jet A1 pits, you're not gonna probably get that like commercial grade consistency at a smaller runway, but you can get rotary, and rotary, you don't need roads for that one, so you don't need runway for it, but they service for Jet A1. They can land here today if they take avgas, which would be like, I think only Robinson aircraft have avgas type use. It was like an old training. Some of them do. But if you see like some of like the corporate helicopters flying around, the S-72s and S-92s, they're taking Jet A1. I flew a Bell 206 and it took Jet A1.
Mhm.
Yes.
Good. Yeah. Yes.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Mhm.
Okay.
David, you have any questions? David?
Yeah, so thinking about like, and this would probably be in the future, but have you considered putting a fund together to allow us to purchase properties unencumbered that might come up for sale that would be, useful to our kind of strategic vision? Because I think the problem we've had the last
Yep.
several years is we're discovering that, encumbered properties are
Everything
difficult.
depends upon where your revenue sources come from and what you have at your disposal. So there's no commissionable local second-class township taxation that could earmark funds for the purposes of establishing like a land trust for the purposes of other types of economic development functions. Really, it's just for open space. That's what we're restricted to.
Mhm.
So you would need to kind of completely scale another revenue source really out of thin air. And the one that we have that can create some level of additive revenue that's not from tax revenues that we have for the general fund would be, do we have a position at someday to not have to use the interest income for the purposes of capital? Can we use that interest income to sort it out for other matters? And that's why I would say, instead of sending it towards paving, send it towards land purchase, if that makes sense. Just
Mhm.
point it in a different direction. But there's just not a lot. And from my understanding, there's not a lot of like available other revenues to shift away from what they're currently servicing in order to free up capacity. So it's kind of a restricted pie chart, if you will.
Right.
But absolutely, if that's one where it's a recognized need, I would say then we need to solve for that equation first to be able to use those revenues towards that.
Yeah. In the meantime, do we have like a mechanism that we could deploy funding, like if we go out and get a loan or something? Because I'm thinking like the land we bought to do the PennDOT improvements at Baltimore and Newark, which obviously, was 20 years ago now.
Yep.
But, little pieces of tough Kenneman, I mean, might be useful if we could
Yep.
put them all together, things like that.
Well, the one thing is in terms of like, if you're going to partner, that's where I would say partnerships are great. So you come to a point where if you wanted to have a parcel of land somewhere in the heart of tough Kenneman, which it's part of our planning doctrine to have housing outcomes for like a workforce or affordable housing kind of function there. The township's responsibility is like, where do we do best? Well, not a lot of precedent for second-class townships doing bulk land purchases and stuff other than open space. So what else could we do? Well, one of them is what we're currently going through, zoning, to provide kind of a better condition for density allowances in those areas. Two is how do we solve infrastructure issues, which are kind of a compounding equation underneath the soil that drive up costs for those development. And then you'd be surprised if you set those conditions to where the cost of development isn't so high. The conditions are right for a different type of affordable developer, not a market rate one, but affordable one, come in and could do the full credited affordable development of that area. Because you're not talking about 100 acres of purchasing, you're talking about like 5 to 6 acres.
Right,
So that's absolutely a thing that could happen, but you have to find the right partners to do it.
right. Okay.
You had, oh,
Oh, no,
sorry.
you're right.
Ooh, ooh. You had that slide with the Open Space Review Board, and I believe it was like every property that we were kind of
Yes.
in consideration. Can we
Yeah.
just kind of flash back to that really quick?
Sure, yeah. And that's one where, if you remember, it's all dependent upon that negotiation, that discussion. It's about outreach and trying to find who is amenable to doing what. These were just ones that they were properties in concert with larger land masses, such as this one, that have been a heightened priority, or they're just adjacent to trail networks. And so that's why they've chosen these groups.
So these are not, we're not like locked into them or anything. These are just kind of like on a target list.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the very first one actually that we had discussed is probably going to end up being developed because you essentially have to have people committed to
Willing to,
selling it because they're going to sell it for like, there's no way we can match what a developer would give them. And we had
Right.
this discussion at the last meeting of,
It's
You know-
also oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, I was just going to say that it's whatever the appraisal comes back at, we cannot offer more than. Like if the appraisal comes back $400,000 or whatever it is, and they say, oh, a developer that's right down the road is going to give me twice that, we can't match it.
Twice would actually be
Yeah.
a lower estimate. It'd
Yeah.
probably be like more 4x.
Yeah.
And that's just because of the value of property these days. Another one to understand too is in the past, the township has been successful of seeking grant subsidies from the county and the state for the purposes of preservation. But those are wells that run dry at a certain point because this isn't a uniquely New Garden issue. This is a uniquely Chester County and Pennsylvania issue. Is now everybody wants to preserve properties, but those resources are contained to those finite groups, and there's only so much that could go around. If people have been paying attention to the 202 corridor, the Credbilly Farm up there in Westtown Township, the county essentially exhausted its entire open space well funding for it. So there's not a lot of county matching grants or supportive grants here. So our dollar doesn't go as far as it did for what we had with, let's say, the Smedley Preserve in Loch Ness, where essentially the county funded almost all of that. If not, they did fund the entire thing. And that was a, what, $1 million purchase? You know, the Credbilly Farm went for 10. And that wasn't with open space money. That was just a pool of funding coming from all resources to be able to purchase that thing.
And it also, speaking to my concern about encumbrances, when you buy it with open space money, then there's a bunch of provisions on it. So like the one farm that's in the middle of the count or the township that we'd like to buy, if we bought that with an easement, then there would be a lot more restrictions on what we would do. So it would be better for us to buy it outright with cash, figure out, you know, what we want to do, if there's any parts of, we want to, you know, use it for like
Mhm.
road maintenance or things like that, if we want to
And that's
do
where you
that,
would-
and then put the easement on.
And that's where you would take, let's say, a output of percentage increase, percentage interest income performance from the 22 million. And say, instead of 22, we're gonna knock that down to 18, but we're gonna take that 4 million and we're gonna purchase this property with it. And maybe the nominal amount of loss of revenue is coming from 4% on 22 to 4% on 18. They'll have a reduction in revenue, but it won't be completely falling off a cliff. And you won't have to have
There
some other
are
revenue
provisions
resource to
that
pull
allow
money back. That's what I was meaning when I talk about finding another pool of
Mhm.
revenue.
There are
We would just have to
provisions.
solve for that nominal or that percentage reduction in interest income
Yeah.
for the purposes of taking and unencumbering a percentage of that, what is it, intact principal balance for the sewer fund to do something like that.
Yeah.
And then once you're done with that, you could get probably, let's say, half of it back, because you would then sell it to a farmer.
Right.
someone who's going
And there's
to
no
use it.
restrictions on
Exactly.
that. Okay, awesome.
If you didn't use.
So there's a
open
whole
space.
blend of different outcomes. You just have to prioritize it and figure out what you're gonna do in terms of reallocation of funding resources to continue what you want to do for paving, but now you want to do paving and land purchasing without open space revenues. So that's how you would have to do it.
Mhm. I got a couple clarifications. So
Sure.
I'll start with the parks and open space, the fitness. So the previous two, you had breakdowns where you were using open space,
Yeah.
66%, but the fitness would be a
That was solely
fee in
as a
lieu of-
park non-open space function because of from my understanding, the history of the park is not an open
Correct.
space initiative.
No, so that would come out of fee in lieu of possibly.
It could come out, so we have about, and it will continue to grow here, especially with
Correct.
So we would have the money for that to do that from the, I think it's almost what, $200,000 plus right now in our combined former recreation and New Garden Hills fund.
Right, so that 102,000 would be funded if.
It can go through that. Yep,
If we were to add it to this year's budget, it could be paid for out of the fee in lieu of.
correct.
Okay,
And that's one where there's also a need to understand about that servicing a potential grant match function as well. So I wouldn't want to rush into the parks thing.
Correct.
So maybe take a portion of that and then put in some blend of fund reserve and capital fund dollars to do that.
agreed.
And of course, I think it's the Chester County Concert, there's another Chester County grant program that's really about the specific about active park projects. And they just put out a round out. That's one where it's different than the Conservation for Open Space. This is a different, I think it's a Vision Partnership Program grant. But you can get substantive funding for like things like pickleball court implementations and stuff like that.
Right.
So these are just cost slides, not grant
Correct.
resource slides. I just want to make
Yes.
sure people understand that. It's not like we're just going to basically open up the wallet and throw stuff at it. We're going to smartly look for ways to not pay for stuff.
Yeah. The other question I had, and I guess I'll just play the devil's advocate here. So I keep hearing about the survey and understand people fill the survey out.
Mhm.
The need for trails, the need for this, the need for that. What is the versus the actual of the head count of the people that are using it?
Yes.
So again, are we getting the proper bang and demand for our buck?
We have looked at it, so it's very tough to get kind of acoustic kind of people counters or whatever you want to do at trailheads. So you have to do kind of like an imperfect science. It's one where we're still looking at getting an exact head count on the trail usage, maybe putting like QR codes for people to scan to kind of check in and check out. There's other ways to do it on some of the trailheads there. But you're right. It's one where the demand is assumptive based off of survey inputs. But when you go out there, it's one thing where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna, get a gym membership, and then you never use it kind of thing. It's like a value-based prop, but you never actually physically see people doing it as much. So that's something that we're still trying to problem solve for.
Yeah, and that's a concern of mine because that's a pretty heavy lift to develop all of these trails and continue to maintain them.
It
If
is.
they're not being utilized, why are we doing it, is my
Yeah.
question. Kenny, the larger excavator, would you be getting rid of the mini excavator? I mean, it's still in pretty good shape. You could get it. So, right, so that looks like the size, if that's the actual picture that Kennett Borough has for their streets department. And it's a little bit bigger than the one you have, but not massive. Yes. Correct.
It's an eight, the one we're looking at is 8 tons, so it's like 17,000.
Right.
It's not huge, but it's not like small.
And the little ones range from 8,000 to 4,500 pounds, the smaller ones. I think yours is right around the 8,000, so be a little bit bigger. Now, again, I don't have a problem because I think that those, I like Barclay's idea about the Bobcat or a walk behind thing as opposed to a rubber tire tractor, that they could be utilized in any areas. I mean, but if we're gonna buy this one and only use this one and have this thing sit around, and can we get 20,000 to offset that cost? That's all. Just a thought. And then page 50, if you can go to that.
You have to specify here. I don't know how much.
You don't have the pages. Okay. Yeah,
I may have
so,
known
so
here.
on that, and I do like that, Mike, I think that is like awesome. That's what's gonna be needed over there. Hopefully it gets utilized. The total cost is is roughly, and we're just thinking about this for the years to come, hopefully getting grants. But could that be utilized with township match at 33 and 66 out of open space? There's no breakdown there. How would we
Oh,
plan to
got
pay
you.
for that?
Yes, so the
So the
matches are
local share,
and that's correct here. Let me,
and I'm not saying we're gonna spend $1.2 million on it.
that's where this comes in.
Okay,
So it's essentially the grant match amount for this
that,
spread out over
Okay.
2 years. So this is based off of the 30% and the 15% match for these two funds, because local share is a no match fund.
got
And
it.
we've already applied for all of these, and we're supposed to be getting our results of this one and this one by the end of the month. Granted, it's DCD, so that means sometime early next year,
Right.
but that's coming. And we'll, at least and that changes things. We'll have to change up this strategy because it won't be viable because we won't have $1.25 million.
Right.
And that's also one where that doesn't take up for the whole entire cost of the project, because the project, if you remember, was about $4.54 million, but like a third of that was just doing the complete reforestation of the entire tract of property at the park, which was reprairiization. Is that a word? That I just make
Yeah,
that up? And
sounds about right.
reforestation.
Reforestation.
But if, like I said, if you want to go out to
Mhm.
the preserve at some time and kind of look inward, what the stormwater project is doing is basically taking a significant percentage out of that reforestation, reprairiization function, because they're doing it for us at cost by PennDOT. So they're implementing part of our restoration effort on scene there. And then what I didn't realize is they're taking the fill from this site and putting it on another piece of the property. Granted, it's not in a pile, they're spreading it out. And then they're going to put more plantings in that area too. So they're actually doubling the effort for reducing that percentage of future reforestation efforts,
Reforestation.
just naturally based off of the fact that we asked them to do a stormwater project there. So we're getting kind of like after it's implemented, we'll get an assessment of like what's left. And then from there, that effort isn't necessarily something that we're going to be seeking, yep, this is just the amount left, we're going to go pay for that. We're going to try to seek partnerships with Longwood. We're going to try to seek partnerships with a lot of our commission conservationist groups around here to just have that kind of philanthropic moment arm in the community come together and reforest and replant everything on the scene there. So when you talk about all these public improvements for the phase one, which is just about access to the park, this grant funding takes out a huge percentage of that. And really the only one cost item, I think it's two, but technically the biggest one is just redoing the cart path. If you ever wanted to put a stronger ADA kind of segment all the way through the park. And I think the other one is a composting facility or composting restroom, excuse me, not facility, I misspoke there. A composting restroom or restroom facility there on scene there, because that's kind of a public expectation for a park. But if you take those two items out, those two alone cost $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
So you could do this, be successful, implement phase one, wait for the restoration effort to kind of be kicked in, and essentially be done with the park. And that's the goal.
Yep.
And then kind of defer the cart path project to a later date. Because it's not like amazing condition, but at least it's serviceable right now.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do high knees in a couple sections. Some of those cart path things, and buckling is pretty good.
Exactly. And then one more question for Kenny. So on like Old Limestone, and I know you did it on Hillendale and New Garden, I question as well. The cross pipes, before we pave them, you're going to replace all of those. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll have to go to
I mean,
that.
it's,
Easy for me to just scroll.
yeah, no, and Hillendale, I think you guys did a good job there because you can't order stuff for that. A lot of the concrete work for the head walls, in walls and outlet walls were custom. You had to frame them up and pour concrete. So
I mean, I'm
again,
just speaking for the township, but I think the new water line rip-up kind of segment is really keeping up with the charm and character of Old Hillendale Road, so I consider it an improvement.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's all I have. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chris.
I just wanted to make a comment following about what Steve was saying about the trails and parks. And I agree that, yeah, it's hard to determine exactly who's using them, but the county did a return on environment study back in 2019, and they found that properties within a half mile of a trail or a trailhead had an increased value of $11,000. So even if you're not using it,
Yeah.
if you like look at a listing for Somerset Lake, you'll see, the pictures of the house, and then the last like 6 are like 4 of the lake, like one of the pool and one of like the health club. So, you
Well,
have a benefit
Yeah,
of it just
it's
from
another one
existing.
too where, speaking back to the communications function, we can do a better job about marketing our trail opportunities. And that's what we're going to be able to put together more so for this upcoming fall is letting people know exactly how to get there, what to do, kind of telling that story as well. So I would probably wait to kind of see that drive as well. And these are all things that are already baked into our community character, the comprehensive plan, a lot of the visioning statements and guidance with public feedback. So I would use that as justification, which is why it's here in the project slides.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think there is a huge benefit to have agriculture and open space. So for the past 2.5 weeks, when I go out to go to work, I see an eagle fly over my house. It's just, and it's huge. I mean, it's like, and then I drive by Barkley's farm, who he keeps the grass cut right up against the corn. It's nice. It is. Thank you.
Any other questions, public-wise? Sure. So there was, and just to clarify that one, because you're correct, that wasn't part of the original plan. So the original plan had a island serving as a calming measure. And then the part of that was that the island extended into West Marlboro. And this was a direct quote from West Marlboro was they don't believe in islands. They don't think they work. Those are almost the exact words. They just don't think that they work. So of course that changes our plan because part of that infrastructure implementation is one where you want it to be one contiguous segment from one stop to the other. And so if you reduced it completely off that hand, it limits the actual calming measure being properly implemented. So this is more of a compromise solution that West Marlboro would agree to make sure that you're entering on each side with like a symmetrical measure, which is to have people at their slowest at the crossing point. And it's an awkward T intersection. A lot of the line, it's no perfect solution, but that's the next best one, if that makes sense. You want me to still go to it or? Right here. Yep. Down here. Like, I don't think this is
Right
it.
across from Sherwood.
down here.
Yeah.
Yep.
Closer to the bypass,
It's going to be about midway coming just as you come
about
in.
halfway.
Well, part of that is immediately thereafter, but number one is just we didn't have the funding. Two, that's all within the greenery kind of area, and then it's letting that kind of settle out. But there was an attempt to try to have them basically furbish like a pad site that we would then go back in and paving for it. So a lot of the staging area was originally intended to be in that one area, but they ended up having to move it closer to the storm project. That was just a function of location aspect. So we couldn't get that efficiency into the project. It was addressed, it just ended up not happening. And then also one where you think about what can go into paving a lot, you can use hot millings. So the goal was to try to see if we can time up the paving of the parking lot to maybe repairs of Hillendale and just dump old Hillendale millings on top of the parking lot there to create a parking lot. We're trying to find a bunch of different ways to save money. That's not saying that we're not going to try. These are just the gross estimates. And then the goal is to kind of value engineer it down. So we're going to put in some like tactical solutions, and then we're going to try to make sure that it's still based off the fact that this is the people's expectation of a, a forward aspect of the park, because maybe it's not just for township residents. If someone else from another area comes in, you want to put on your sense of pride and the fact that this is a good park that a lot of people want to come to. Yeah. This one, yeah, actually, and Mike can confirm that, it was probably the most amount of interest, which is why it was at the top of the list for parks initiatives. Yeah. It's gonna go down. Mhm. Well, that's why it's so much easier to have, here you're coming in down Church Road, gigantic wayfinding sign, Smedley Preserve, parking right here. You have 40 dedicated spots, whatever it's gonna be. It's right there, kind of at a, a natural intersection with Sherwood Drive. And you don't have to go down McHugh Road, go off some sort of off-beaten path. People mistakenly pull into the Lochnaron Farm facility all the time there now too. So it's gonna take time to implement the vision, but the good news is we're getting all the planning initiatives with proceeds from grant funding, so it's starting right now. We have a 2-person team right now. Yeah. We have 1 park truck. The equipment that's stored on the facility is correct. Yep. And so they have the tow behind thing, and so they bring it out the site to do all the so when a tree falls in the wood, no one's around to hear it. So
I think the issue is, and I don't want to speak for Kenny, but oftentimes they were needing it at the same time. So if there's a storm, they need this equipment all at the same time. And so it ends up really just delaying everything. Kenny, Mike, I don't know if either of you want
it's
to.
a
Yeah,
and don't get me wrong, that's one word, that's just what we have right now. It's kind of like with Public Works. We had a capacity need for 8. We kind of really market competitively funded. We only had 5 people because we had funded positions that weren't based off of a realistic market competitive wage for the township. So we were budgeting for the wrong outcome, if that makes sense. Now, this is one where prior to it, New Garden Park had a certain level of demand on the site. It was pretty low. It was right by the Public Works facility. So naturally, we had some cost efficiencies by having parks serviced by Public Works officials with the equipment and means. The game has changed. You added almost 300 additional acres of park space, and it's not right by the Public Works facility. It's all the way at the top corner of the township and all the way down at the bottom corner of the township. And things just take time. If you're doing like a work order management function, which is a very natural daily operational kind of commissioning and sorting out of the work, you come in, you get your rundown of the worksheet to do, and it's like that's just your time of the day is spent just out there doing stuff. And if you have to do multiple amounts of trips back and forth in the township to run and go get equipment, you're less efficient and you're less operationally capable. And so from my standpoint is what is the measurement of getting to a level of increased operations at the most efficient cost that we could get? And that's what this is about, because the complaints don't go away when things aren't kind of in peak condition. And so that's usually a measure against us that we're like, well, yeah, but there's a reason for that. We're not adequately funding the sustained level of, I'll call them organizational excellence, which for the township is more skewed towards parks and public works functions because they're the ones that people use and see the most. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's a bodies and dollars issue, yes. And we commissioned these programs, but we didn't necessarily fully bake of what it meant, and we're catching up to that now, which is why we're using the open space fund as more of a means to meet that demand. Each year's, it's 25% of the starting year fund balance. So whatever is additive and accumulated in the fund balance. So let's say if we all of a sudden decided that we want to go out and purchase like a property for $2 million, guess where that fund balance is going to go down to? So then you have 25% of that. And so that's why there's 2 options for, it's called Act 32, for uses of revenues for the purposes of maintenance or implementations or projects. You can either use the fund balance percentage or you could use 25% of the in-year levy or revenue. So for us, if we had $500,000 of open space revenue coming in through the EIT portion of the tax, which is that 0.125 on top of the 1%, we could use $125,000 of that. but it doesn't make sense to do that because we have larger needs. And the greater thing is 25% of the fund balance is a bigger pot of money. And that works if you're not exceeding the amount of revenue coming in. If you exceed that revenue coming in, you're going to lower the fund balance. So we're playing this very delicate dance in between the margins and making sure that we have enough to fund this, which is operations and implementations, and enough remaining to purchase properties. Ideally using that capacity of revenue in the in-year balance more so than just exceeding it. So it's a delicate dance. And there are properties that fall within that, like less than 300, 400,000 for the purpose of trail easements, which by public sentiment, trails are a priority as well. So it's a balancing act. I call it the balance slicing of the pie approach. No, that's a great point. Any other questions?
Pretty good. Everybody good?
I don't have any other questions, but while the department heads are here, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up because I've gotten some questions from parents. I guess every year the schools require 20 years of 20 years, 20 hours of community service. I was wondering if there's any way we could figure out some type of bulk like event where we could get them all kind of doing the same task. And there you go, Mike. I'm sure there will need to be some type of like
Signature.
signature or some type of verification. So would we be able to like put a post out that like for any kids or whoever might need community service hours, like
We put our heads together in terms.
figure something out? Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up.
I heard the Friends of New Garden Trails needs younger membership, so there you go. They can just go through and grease a line of poison ivy kind of removals and stuff. Sounds great. Picking weeds, it's something that needs to be done. Well, no. Well, no, I want to thank all the department directors for putting the plan together, helping me kind of sort out the priorities, putting them into a template that essentially this is one where we're still trying to say like sustainable plans, kind of the need here, avoid spikes. We do have risks, so this isn't the end all be all, but it's what fits our financial strategy at the moment. All right. Well, thank you very much. This is up on the website. So with this, we're not approving anything tonight. It's just one where if you do have feedback, you need to see something that needs to change or something, like let me know in the meantime.
Perfect.
All right.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. 8:59. We're getting ready to hear the bell again.